Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
So most of you know Jeanette Sheliga. She takes no introduction, but she is a board member and vice president of our society. She's also the program chairperson. She heads the North Tonawanda Library Genealogy Club and is a member of the APG, Association of Professional Genealogists,
Yep.
as well as National Genealogical Society.
Yes.
I think that's everything. Please welcome my friend.
Thank you. All right, welcome. I'm so glad I see some new faces of people that weren't here this morning. I see repeat customers, so we didn't scare you away, which is awesome.
Yeah, right.
This is a different color scheme. If you want us to turn down the lights again, please let me know if you're having trouble, or we'll do it anyway. Yeah. There you go. Okay, so does that make it a little bit easier to
Yes.
see? Great. All right, so the Genealogical Proof Standard, this is getting acquainted with the GPS. You can take week-long, sessions on one portion of this. This is just an overview, kind of just getting familiar with what is the GPS, and just to start kind of hearing the vocabulary and the steps to kind of get it under your, in your head, so that the next time you hear it, it might start to click. And then you might pick up a second time, or third time, and fourth time, and then it starts to sink in and becomes habits. So this is our first introduction to what the GPS is. I don't know about you guys, but when I sit down and do genealogy, I go crazy. I am like over here, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, phew, and I'm like on this side of my tree, and then I find, click, 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 click. I have no idea what I did after a couple hours. And the same thing happens. I'll go to courthouses, I plan a research trip, and I come home with a stack of papers, and then I put them on top of a stack of papers that I got from my last research trip. I'm unorganized mentally with some of this sometimes, and then physically with the stuff in my office. I put up the squirrel, kind of like, that's how sometimes I do it. And I buy books that I don't read. I have every intention to do that. I subscribe to websites that I forget to use, so thank you for laughing and nodding. You are where I am, okay? So part of my 2020 resolution is to slow down, figure out what I've got on my desk, what have I collected so far, organize it, and put it together and start analyzing what I have. I have bought death certificates twice, even this past year. And so I'm smarter than this, and if only I was keeping better track of everything, I think I could accomplish more than what I do when I'm just having fun, and everything like that. So that's what the GPS is going to help us all do. It kind of gives you a plan. What are we doing with this? And so you might think of it, and you might think like, well, I'm just doing this for fun. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to see my stuff. You might have that, or that this is only for professionals, or it's not. It's for all of us, because you are all nodding. Your rooms look like my room, okay? And so we put in so much time and effort and money into this. Don't we want to have a product that we're proud of? Many times you guys will come up to me like, oh, so frustrated, this person on Ancestry, their tree is all wrong, and they've copied my stuff, it's all wrong. We don't want to be the one that they're talking about. We want to be the one that they're like, wow, look at your tree. Kind of like, so that's what this is. This is for everyone. It's not just for professionals. So the Board for Certification for Genealogists, BCG, came up with these, I think a couple decades ago now, and you can get this book on Amazon for less than $13. It's the Genealogy Standards. And so it is the current second edition, came out in 2019. The one before that, this one, was I think 2014, and the difference that they made was they started adding, I don't want to say rules, but information about how to use DNA into it too. So they were updating the standards to include DNA, because it's a source that we can use to help us figure out our problems in our family tree. So this is where it comes from, and everyone should have a copy. It's got a glossary in the back. It's a really great reference. So, you know, in hindsight, when I said, you know, did everyone get a handout, I kind of realized nowhere in the handout did I spell out the 5 steps of the GPS for you. So as we're going through, you don't have to write them all down right now because I'm going to go through each one. But if you are taking notes, these are the 5 steps to the Genealogical Proof Standard. The first one, and in order to reach a sound conclusion, the first one is a reasonably exhaustive research. The second one is complete and accurate source citations. The third one is a thorough analysis and correlation. The fourth one is a resolution of conflicting evidence. And the fifth one is a soundly written conclusion based on the strongest evidence. And you can find this on the BCG website. And I know, like you said, I see you guys writing. We'll go through each one separate, so even if you just got the first one, you're ahead of the game. So I'm going to go on. So, part of my issue is when I'm playing and I see those squirrels or those bright shiny objects and I go off, I often don't finish what I sat down starting to do. And so the first part of that is decide what do you want to accomplish? What is one question you know, that you would like to do, a research question? And then you kind of decide what are some of the best things that I can do to answer that question. So you start with a question, and then you plan out your attack. And I kind of have, you know, a roadmap. If you get in the car and you just start driving around, you might eventually get where you're going, but if you used your GPS, haha, see, you know, if you could get there quicker in a straighter path. And while you're doing all that, shameless plug, why don't you come next month to our program where Carol is going to be talking about keeping a log while you're doing your research. She's hiding back there. Why? So that you can pick up where you left off. I found that, you know, sometimes as I'm doing things that I forget where I left and I lose a half hour kind of recatching myself back up to where I was. So you can just keep some notes about, you know, like the next time I want to, you know, I'm researching this, I want to check into this area type thing. Okay, next slide, I got it, okay. She's going like this. Okay, so we want to start off with a research question. There are 3 types of research questions. One, if you're trying to establish a relationship of a person to someone else. Who is so-and-so's parents? Who were their children? Okay, so you're deciding a relationship. The second one is an identity. If you happen to have a person that had the same name as someone else in their area, you know, which one is my John Smith versus the other John Smith? You know, you're trying to establish that. The third type of question is circumstance, or, you know, an event. When did the person immigrate? You know, things like that. Trying to find them in a specific time and place type of thing. Okay, so 3 types of research questions. So, if my research question was, this is a relationship one, who are the parents of Ernest Larkin that was born on October 10, 1896 in Buffalo, New York? Okay, so I'm asking the room, what kind of records should I look for to find his parents? What would name his parents? Birth certificate, great. Census, marriage certificate, baptism, death certificate. Find it, like, if he's buried in cemetery records, if he's buried in a family plot. Obituary might, yeah. So you guys are great at this, okay? These were my top candidates, where I was trying to honestly think of all the type of records. Family members, they might know. I might not know, but my mom might know. You know, those vital records. The census, you guys said. You mentioned obituaries, newspaper articles, or local histories, county histories. Church records, somebody said baptism. Wills and probate, maybe his parents left him something to my son, you know, that would connect his social security application list parents, that would be a place. Cemetery records, and if I can't find it on him, what about his siblings? Did his siblings list the parents, you know, on the death certificate or their death certificate, things like that. And online trees, and I know how often we talk about, no, don't use online trees, they're bad. People don't do good work. They might still have right information on there. You know, like they might not have any evidence to back it up, but they could be right. So you can't count them out. They are valid, you know, like as one of the sources. They may not be as good as other sources, but they're there. Okay, so on the back of your handout, could you do the lights up, please? I would like you to please write down a research question, for realsies, like not just like, come up with something that you would like to know. It doesn't have to be the worst brick wall you have ever had in your tree. Just something you were curious about. You know, I've wondered who so-and-so's parents were. I've wondered if my ancestor fought in this war. You know, I wondered when this person died. When did they get married? Come up with something. Pin drop, I love it. If only the 5th graders I teach at school were as good as you guys. And underneath that, start to come up with some ideas, just like how I did on here. What are some records do you guys think might help answer that question? Facebook Live's gonna think we froze. I know you're still working, but you know, Carol was passing out name tags for everyone. I want you to turn to your neighbor, elbow partner, and I want you to tell them your research question and some of the sources you came up with, and see if they have a, hey, why don't you check out this too? Okay, so make a friend with the people near you, introduce yourself, and collaborate.
My question is almost impossible.
No, I don't have my tag on, so
I want to know where my grandfather, what town in Germany my great-grandfather I'm not interested about, that's why I'm interested in the passenger ship. I have an idea about how the name there's probably at least 100 people that name. Everyone was named August or John or something.
Even with my brother-in-law, my sister was going to family tree.
In Germany, everyone was named Herman.
Yeah.
It's possible.
how I get information about the oh yeah, I mean it's
Why can't you guys be my fifth graders? I do, guys get 3, 2, 1, like, you guys are so good. Did your elbow partner maybe have an idea that you didn't have? Networking is awesome. Come to our meetings. This is where you can make those genealogy friends. Follow us on Facebook. Make the connections here. We all have different specialities that are coming from different angles that we might think of things that you haven't thought of. So please, keep coming here and doing this type of stuff. Ask questions. It's awesome. Okay, so number 1, our first step. We've got our research questions. We've got our plan. We know what records we want to go after. Now we start going through the steps. So, if you didn't write it down before, the first step of the GPS is a reasonably exhaustive research. Okay. And people always tease, it's not exhausting. It's exhaustive, reasonably exhaustive. So reasonably meaning you don't have to find every single record ever created in the whole wide world. So, reasonably exhaustive research. So, we're looking for sources. A source is a container of information. It can be all types of records, publications, artifacts, whatever it is. And so it has information inside of it. The census is a census that we all have family members. It's a container of information. And so if you are only collecting one type of source, you're not doing a good job. Like if you're building your tree and you're only collecting census records and you don't collect vital records or other, directories or, other type of evidence, you're not doing a thoroughly exhaustive research. You need to hit many different types of sources. A podcast that some of us listen to is called Research Like a Pro. It's a mother-daughter team. The mother is an accredited genealogist, and so it's free. You can, if you have a podcast app, you can listen to it, or you can stream it from their website, which is familylocket.com. And in their 3rd episode, Diana Elder said, start by gathering up all the sources that you've already found and talk to close relatives who have knowledge or information about the project you're working on. And so often, I want to jump straight to my computer. And that's how I order second death certificates. I'll never get that $44 back. So give everything you have on the person, that you want to do your research question on, and start to look at it. Maybe I assume that I have uploaded everything in my ancestry tree, and then I found an email that I have later in the presentation I was going through my old sent emails from 2013 where I asked a county clerk, can you look up the marriage? And they replied back. Well, and I didn't put that up in my tree, and as I was making this presentation for you guys today, I came across the same problem, and I actually put on my slide, I should contact the county clerk. I did that 6 years ago. But I didn't upload, I could have taken a screenshot or some sort of information and uploaded it to my tree, kept a note, and said, I have contacted, you don't have to do that again. Just by being organized, saving that time, figuring out what you have, all those papers, put it together in one place. That way, if you're preparing a meal, don't you go in the kitchen and find out what you have first? So you don't buy extra garlic salt. You already have 2 bottles because you weren't sure the last time you went out. It's the same type of thing. So another podcast that I enjoy is by Amy Johnson Crow, and it's called The Generations Cafe. Again, it's free. You can download it, using your any podcast listening type of app, or you can stream it on her website. And so just this past week, she came out with the Wander method. And so she's saying, W, what do you want to find? There's our research question. A, analyze what you already have. Again, what have you already collected? It's the first step. And then note what is missing. So if on your list you had said, hey, I need to get a death certificate, maybe you already had it and you forgot, like me. And so you don't have to, know what's missing, you already have that. And then D, discover new records. E, evaluate what you have. And then R, repeat as necessary. And you can go to her website and download this. She made this icon that's nice. You can print it, hang it right next to your computer, to help you think about the steps as you're going through. So it's Amy Johnson Crow. Another website is called Evidence Explained. And it is put together by the author of the Evidence Explained book, which is Elizabeth Shown Mills. And she has what's called quick lessons. And I believe that this is on your handout as far as the citation for it. So if you go to quick lessons and you find quick lesson 17, she shared her evidence analysis process map. And so this is where we start to look at our sources, because we know some are better than others. And this is going to help us determine which ones are better than which ones. So here it is. We're going to start with our sources. We've gathered what we have, and we're ready to go searching for sources, but you probably have a list of what ones on your paper. Ones might be better than others. So we've got original, derivative, and authored sources, like authored narratives. Okay, so an original source is created in its first recorded form. It's not based on other records, and it's often been made at the time or close to the event when it happened. So it's more likely to be accurate than ones that were maybe done way after the event. So an original source is the ones we often want to get. We want the best. An example was, here's my grandmother's birth certificate. She was born February 28th, and it was recorded shortly thereafter on March 6th. Okay, this is an original record. It was not created from something else. This was the first time it was created. Now I have an example of a delayed birth certificate. I know it's small, but my great-great-grandmother, she was born in 1897, but she didn't record a birth certificate until 1959. Okay, so it doesn't mean that the information on here isn't as accurate as one that was recorded shortly, but you have to start looking at those details, and you have to start analyzing, because if you were to compare, one or the other, you might want to, go with one that was recorded sooner to the event. Yeah.
When did birth certificates become common or mandatory?
That is it depends. In New York State, every other place has rules. In New York State, they tried in 1847 for a couple years. Nobody listened to them, so they quit it. And then in 1880, certain cities started they started doing them. The law started in 1913, I think. But I think it took 3 years or something for everybody to be compliant. So you have to try your best. It may have been recorded, it may not have. And you can go to the Family Search Wiki and do a search for New York State vital records, and they explain all that right in there. Or the NYGMB has a 2-volume set, like the Bible of New York State, and it explains it all in there too.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How does one go about, you say this person's record was filed in 1959, I think you said, and the person was born in 1897?
Because when she was born, where she was born didn't require a birth certificate.
So those...
She didn't need one, so maybe she wanted to, maybe she wanted to get a passport or something, as the laws changed, and she needed to have a birth certificate to do so, so she had to file, anything that's filed after 1 year of the birth is called a delayed birth certificate.
So how do we then go back, what do you just go year by year, from 1897 until you find one? Or
My
how does that-
family had this. This is a piece of paper that was collected in the family, what they saved. That's how I came across it, but I have contacted county clerks. Often they have an index of names and they can look up a name to see when it's filed. You just have to tell them, spread out the,
And then you just have to look at the information on the thing.
yeah. Yes.
So all county,
So sorry, Barbara?
I've told this story before, my aunt, and I should have, before I burned it, after she died, I should have kept her old passport, but I didn't, because I wasn't into all this stuff. She evidently was born in the 21-22 North Tonawanda, still with a midwife. The midwife forgot to record it. And supposedly, I got this story from her, that while she was in college, she had a summer job at Bell during the war and needed to prove, I guess, that she was a citizen. And they used her baptismal records.
Yeah. On this
And
one,
that's how she ended up getting a passport.
on this one, her documentation is the 1915 New York State Census, a lodge record, a marriage record, and her child's birth record.
Ah,
So, not the best evidence. I think her strongest is the 1915 census, saying that she was 18 years old. You know, like the rest were records that she created. Yes.
the county clerk has all the birth certificates? I thought you had to go to the town or city where you were born.
It all depends, yes,
Oh,
that's right. If they were born in a city, it would be in the city. If they were born in a town, it would be in the county. And then a copy was sent to Albany. This is a whole other lecture. We gotta move on. So those are original records, and then derivative records are created from other records. They're more prone to error because they were copying from something else. And so they're great to be like, oh wow, we should go look for and see if there's an original, you know, if it's still around. Sometimes the originals have been lost and all we have is the derivative, but it's a great clue to go. An example of this, I, every week, which I need to do for this week, take one of our books from our Niagara County Genealogy Library off of our shelves and I share it with you guys via our blog. Go subscribe to our blog, it's right there, niagaragenealogy.org, and you click on our blog and hit subscribe. And so then you would get notifications of, hey, did you know we had this in our library? So that you guys are familiar with our holdings, you can come visit us and check out all the awesome stuff we have. One of the books we had is the Marriages from Buffalo, New York newspapers, 1811 to 1884 by June Partridge Zintz. I think that's how you say her name. Now, this is an index. This is not, she didn't copy every marriage announcement in the papers. She abstracted that information. So this is an example of a derivative source. She took it from something else. It is not original. And she only abstracted the name of the bride and groom and the date of marriage and then what newspaper and the date it published. That article could tell you all sorts of things if you could find the original article. You know, it might, you know, describe about the people that visited from out of town, who the maid of honor was, could have been her sister, all sorts of details. So you want to use the derivative to help you go find an original. Another example of the derivative are the New York State Vital Record Indexes. Those come up a lot as hints on ancestry. And so it says the surname, the name of the child, the date of birth, the place of birth, and the certificate number, meaning that Albany has a certificate for this record. It's a derivative because it was copied, the index was made from the records that they had. They could have accidentally hit the 8 instead of the 9, you know, when they were typing it. But it's a clue. You know, derivatives can be good and they can be accurate. So between the two, original or derivative, you always want to try to find the original. Okay, so this is helping us. When we're looking through our list, like, what are the things that I wrote down? You know, we want to get those originals. The third type of source is called an authored narrative. And this is like, you know, those family genealogies that people put together, and it can be coming from a whole bunch of different sources. It could come from originals, it could come from other narratives, it could come from derivatives, but it's taking all of it and creating a new piece of work. Online Trees is a version of this. your tree is a piece of your work. You've put it together, you've compiled it. Okay, so here's an example of an authored narrative. This is a family history book that's in my family, and it has the date of death is February 30th. Well, we know that's incorrect. There is no February 30th. But, and you can see my family crossed it out and put a 20. So what's interesting though is I don't know who crossed it out and put the 20 because that book has been handed down in my family for generations. So it was an authored narrative that someone has edited, but then I went and found the original death certificate. He died on the 19th. Now it was 11:45 at night, and we think maybe the family didn't find out until after midnight, because everything from that family, the cemetery, everything, his obituary says February 20th, but he didn't. He died on the 19th. So you gotta get those original records. Even though I had a stack load of everything that said February 20th, but one document that's weighted heavier by someone that witnessed the event can take those out. You guys are good. You're with me. Okay, so we want to find things that are also independently created. So in this example, Seth Whitaker, he died. His wife is most likely the person that ordered his headstone, that notified the newspaper. And so if our question is when was he born, and we were using these records, it's probably coming all from the same person. And so we want to find things, different records. Maybe we can find his baptism record or things like that to find out when he was born. Other records. You want to find independently created sources. Okay, now when we're talking about originals, a lot of us are using microfilmed images and digital images. We're on Family Search and Ancestry, MyHeritage. Just so you know, this counts as an original. It's not as great as an original, because you can see, as long as you believe it's been unaltered, and they deliberately leave the outside of the book, so you can see that you have the entire page, that they didn't cut off the edge. It's not as great because Krista Cow in one of her videos, she talked about how her mother, when she was doing her family tree, would write hypotheses in pencil, and then when she confirmed it, she'd write it in pen. But when somebody copied it back in the 70s, when the Xerox machines were really bad, you couldn't tell that one was pencil and one was pen. And so the family started believing that everything on that piece of paper was true, and they built trees for 30, 40 years based off of that. So if you can, the information's still good, but if you still could if you could hold this book and look at it to see if, maybe something was written so lightly that it didn't quite come through in the picture, things like that. Always go for the original, but these, facsimiles do count as original documents. Okay, reasonably exhaustive research also includes DNA. If our question is, are these people the parents of so-and-so, and you've got a DNA connection with someone that also goes to them, you can use that as part of your plan to answer your question. I got to go to FGS. Al asked who was our FGS. I got to go to the conference this past year, and Rick Sayer was just like, if you're not using DNA, it would just be like as if you chose not to use land records, or you chose not to use census, and so it's like DNA is part of it now. And so don't forget to include that in your questions. And that's the big reason why they came out with the second edition. Okay, also, not everything's online. Come to our library. So there are sources that we might have the only copy of, even us. Like that delayed birth certificate, maybe the state has it and I do. So we, not everything is online. Don't forget to add, when you're coming up with ideas for where to get those documents to answer your question, don't forget libraries and societies and courthouses and archives. They might have stuff that hasn't been digitized and may never be digitized. We are located at 215 Niagara Street, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 1 to 5. So, any questions about sources? We're good so far? I'm seeing smiles and nods. That's awesome. Okay. Number 2, our second step. And I'm sorry I didn't put it on the handout. It's complete and accurate source citations. I'm going to take a drink here later. So, I started my serious researching in 2002, and I got, 18 years now of stuff that I'm not sure where that came from. Sometimes I would be good about it, and when I'd come, I would take like a copy of the title page of the book, but then I wouldn't paperclip them together. Oh, or then, I have so many good examples of what not to do. But what worse, not only just on library trips, but then when digital stuff came out, and I would take screenshots of things. I think my worst example was on Fulton history. I found an obituary of someone. I just took the picture, cause I was so excited to find a picture, and I put it up as his profile picture, and then I couldn't refine the obituary on Fulton to why did I do that? So creating a citation is just for us to help mark down where we found it so we could find it again, where other genealogists and future, generations to come can help find that again. And then also, for other people, if they're looking at your tree and they're like, I wonder if they did a good job, and they want to look at your sources, that helps them say, did this person do a thoroughly exhaustive research, or were they only looking on online trees? Or did they actually go and get records? And things like that. So the citations, that's what it's for. The 5 elements of a citation are who, what, where is, where in, and when. So who is often the author of the book, okay? What, the title, where is it? So if it's published, you don't have to necessarily put that, but if it's an unpublished something, like let's pretend I wrote this and I only have one copy, you would have to say where it was, where you found it, where in, like what page was it that you're referencing in, and then when was it created. So who, what, where is, where in, and when. We always include the what, the when, and the where is. Even if we're not sure when, you can give a range. It must have been in between 1910 and 1920. You can narrow it down by, deductive reasoning. We try to include the who. Sometimes we don't know who wrote it. I don't know who wrote a narrative that I found in the library. And sometimes the where in, if it's not paginated or things like that, we can't always tell. Genealogy uses the Chicago manual style for citations. Evidence explained, they say that it's the type of citation that allows for a full citation with footnotes or endnotes, but it also gives the author freedom to add unlimited comments relative to the source afterwards. So after you answer your who, what, when, all that stuff, then you can say, this applies to my family, and you can talk about it within the citation. Okay, so types of citations. One is a source list, which is like your bibliography. That's what I used for the beginning of your handout where I just mentioned some of the books. But then, if you're writing something longer, you might want to use footnotes or endnotes. So some people like endnotes because they don't want a reader to have to get where half a page is citations, but a lot of more, when you're looking at these peer-reviewed journals and everything, they prefer footnotes because that way they can check the resource and then go back up to see what it is they're talking about. Also with footnotes, if you have something that's like in a 3-ring binder, like say I need a report, I have the endnotes and then somebody copies it and they're like, I don't need this stuff. And then they just take the pages that has the writing and they don't copy the endnotes, then they've gotten detached from each other. So that's another reason to do footnotes. And then there's source labels. That's like if you have a picture and you want to put something on, something physical. Okay, so the basic format, it's not that scary. Okay, let me use an example of, here, can I grab this? Let me use an example of our upcoming book discussion book. I was laughing so hard at how many things I found to plug in this. So, for members, if you want to read this book and come talk about it with us, it starts with an author, the title of the book, the place of the publication, the publisher, the year, and the page. So we start with our author. The author is Claire Santry. I think that's how you pronounce it. And then the title of the book. You put that in italics. The Family Tree Irish Genealogy Guide, How to Trace Your Ancestors in Ireland. Okay, so you, author, title. Then, who published it and where? Blue Ash, Ohio, Family Tree Books, 2017. And then if I was referencing a specific page in there, page 146. Okay? It's not that bad. Not that bad. So, this is sort of the Genealogist Citation Bible. I've already picked it up a couple of times. It's called Evidence Explained, Citing History Sources from Artifacts to Cyberspace by Elizabeth Schoen Mills. It's the 3rd edition revised, 2017. And anything you can possibly think of due to like an inscription on jewelry to a blog post is on here. And it's not, I don't want to use like Mad Libs, like insert, adverb here or anything like that, but she has examples for everything. And so you just kind of apply it then to what you're looking at, and then you can use her examples to create a citation. Websites help us. As we're finding stuff on Family Search, Ancestry, MyHeritage, all of them, they tell us most of the time where they get the information, or they try to help you create a citation. So starting with Family Search, if I was looking at the 1860 census, and I scroll down, it's got a citation right there. And so it says United States Census, 1860, database with images, Family Search. It gives the web address, 14 December 2017, that must have been when it was originally connected to that person. Nelson D. Johnson, an entry for Artemis Perrine, 1860. So they're helping us. It doesn't exactly match her format, but hey, it's better than not having anything, right? Okay, so Ancestry does the same thing. If you've attached a record to someone, and you click on it where it says View, and it'll pull up the record, then click on Citation Details, that second one down. And if you look at that, and I know it's a little small, but they transcribe the document, they have details about it, this is the 1860 census, they have an exact web address. You can copy paste if it's someone, you want to shoot it to somebody to look at. And then it says the publisher, and even though it's Ancestry, but they originally got the microfilm from NARA. And it says what role, like microfilm in what series, record group that they got it from. So that helps you. So if I was to really follow, though, what Elizabeth Schoen Mills says, this is what the citation would look like, or at least my best crack at it. And so if this is intimidating, you're like, holy cow, she has little guides. This is one just for citing ancestries, databases, and images. And just a couple examples, of the most major things that you use. And the census is on here. This is another one that she has for citing genetic sources for history research. So if you want to talk about the Centimorgans, connected to, from one family to you want to create a citation, So you can get these, they're less than $15 or something. They're just quick guides on Amazon is where I found them. And you're welcome to come up here to look at any of the books I brought up at the end. This is so silly. The last time I brought books, somebody walked off with one. Please don't steal my books. But where I was, they bought me a replacement. They were super sweet about it. But I wrote my name on it. Oh, hey, look it. I put it right there. So you can look for that. Some of hers do have a second edition, so just be careful. If you're looking at one from 2010, see if there hasn't been an update on that quick sheet. There's a website, now I haven't used this personally, but I've heard other people do it. It's called Zotero, that it helps you make citations And some genealogists use it and swear by it. So if that sounds like where you want to go, check out Zotero. Okay, so we're going through citations, and if you're really into it, there's a workbook. Nice, big, so you can read all about, what if it's published, what if it isn't published, things like that. And then at the end of each chapter, there's questions that workbook that you work through, and then the answers are in the back. And this is by Thomas W. Jones, Dr. Jones, from 2017. But if you want to hear it in person, he's giving a class. This is the program schedule for GRIP, which is the Genealogical Research Institute out of Pittsburgh. They have 3 different intensive week-long, it's an institute, courses. And last year, because Citations intimidated me, and I can't wrap my head around them, and I wanted to, so I went. And I spent a week with Dr. Jones, and I tried super hard to understand, and it is starting to sink in. You just have to keep trying and keep practicing, and not let it intimidate you. My mom asked me, she's like, well, how was your class today? I'm like, we spent the whole morning on the semicolon. She's like, you can't be serious. I'm like, okay, there was other punctuations too. It's really like he gets into that type of detail. And I left with a workbook that's different than this book, but there's other fun classes too. This summer, Barbara and I, we want to go to the German one that's in the 2nd week. Talk about just genealogy camp. And it's so interesting to just, when you're at lunch, it's on a college campus. And you can walk by any table and you pick up language that you know. You know what I mean? Like you're with all these people that are just so into it as you are. And think about how we were just talking to our neighbors and maybe got some opinions from them on how to break through. Imagine what a place like that could bring. Where it's all levels from people around the country. So GRIP Genealogy Camp, Pittsburgh, I'm going, Barbara's going, anyone else wants to go? Do it.
Registration is a week from Wednesday.
Yeah, actually registration opens
From
February
Wednesday.
5th. And certain classes, such as the DNA ones, fill quickly. That's GRIP, GRIP-ITT, like Pittsburgh.org if you want to look more. Also, there's lots of free stuff out there. If you just Google genealogy citations, there are videos on YouTube. Roots Tech Conference posts their videos. There's ones there. Family Search has a learning center, which is free. They have all sorts of presentations and webinars on there. Family Tree University has a citations course that you can pay for to take. There's lots of stuff out there if that's what you want to do. Okay, you're still doing good? We're at the hump. We're almost there. This is our step number 3, which is analysis and correlation of the collected information. Analysis and correlation of the collected information. Okay, so on Elizabeth Show Mills map, process map, which by the way you can get at our website, which I showed you. It's in the front cover of Evidence Explained. It's in the back of the genealogy standards. So you can find this in multiple places. So we're on to information. We have our sources. Now we need to look at what's inside of them. And so we can find out that things can be primary, which is firsthand, secondary, which is secondhand, or undetermined. We're not sure who gave that information. So primary information is reported by an eyewitness, someone that's a principal party that has had firsthand knowledge of what they are reporting. And it most often happens soon after an event. Here's an example. My family found this in probate records. They had to have the house appraised. The appraiser came. He wrote down what he witnessed. He created the record and he signed it. So this is a primary document about how bad the house was. Roof in poor condition, chimney needs repointed. This is what he witnessed. So primary informant. Then there's secondary information. It's reported by secondhand, someone else. They do not have firsthand knowledge of it. So this is more prone to errors. They didn't witness it. So I don't know how many, like you tell me a story and then I go to tell it and I make up some details that I think I understood or heard, like that's where this is. So if you're comparing the two, we always want to try to find documents that have that primary information. An example of a death certificate is an interesting one because it's got both primary and secondary on the same original document. The part that I've highlighted is where the doctor has primary information. He last witnessed the person that died. This is the cause of their death. This is when they died. But then, if you look at the other side, where there's the personal statistics, this was done by the informant. And it lists, when the decedent was born. Well, the informant was his son. He might know when his dad said his birthday was, but he wasn't even alive when his dad was born. So it's secondhand, okay? So you have to look at who the informant is to help judge whether or not that's the best information you can gather. And then there's undetermined. We don't know. We don't know who wrote it. And when you're looking at census records, I believe, and I'm not sure which census is, after the census enumerator knocked 3 times on the door, they were allowed to ask your neighbors who lived there. They couldn't get a hold of you. Yeah, that they could say, and then your neighbor could be giving you the information. That is until, I'll jump ahead, that is until the 1940 census. The X's with the circle, that's the first census that tells you who the informant was, who they were asking. 1940. I love that. Light bulbs just went off all over the place. This is great. So, prior to the 1940, we're not sure who the informant was. Another example of who I'm not sure the informant was, this narrative that I found at the public library in Randolph about a family. It could be right. I'm not sure where they got their information. I'm not sure who wrote it. It could be a member of the family. It could not be. So this is undetermined. Okay, I'm not certain. So I would maybe weigh something, I certainly would weigh something that I know it was primary, the person witnessed it, versus secondary or undetermined. Not saying it can't be right, just as you're weighing your documents. So, primary is less error prone, but sometimes if you're looking at secondary, I made this slide weird, I'm sorry about that. If you don't know who the informant is, you can sometimes you can infer who it is. You can sometimes figure it out and turn an undetermined into a likely suspect of who it is. Okay. So, we've looked at our sources, and we've looked at our evidence. Who was writing down the information? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on to evidence. We're moving over. It's the last column. Okay, so evidence. We're turning our information that we've collected into evidence to hopefully answer our research question. So, there's 3 types of evidence. There's direct evidence, indirect evidence, and negative evidence. So direct and indirect evidence directly answers the question. Who was Joe's dad? Joe's dad was Bob. It says it right there in the document. Could be wrong, but directly answers my question. Indirectly does not directly answer the question, but you combine it with other stuff and put it together. It might say Bob, but not his last name. But another one, you've got Mr. Smith. And you can put Bob and Mr. Smith together to make Bob Smith. Okay? You can put stuff together. So here's an example of something directly answering. My research question was, when did Elizabeth and Frank get married? It's on their marriage list. Marriage, no, date of marriage, November 1st, 1911. Directly answers my question. An indirect one would be, I've got this newspaper and I want to know maybe where somebody was born, and it says, you know, Whitaker, I'm looking at the last one, in Richmond to Mr. and Mrs. Nelson Whitaker, a daughter, and I have, you know, the newspaper, it came from Mansfield, Niagara County, August 19, 1896. So I know where the person was born, but I don't know who. Who's the daughter? I don't know. But I can combine that with the 1900 census. And in 1900, there was a Mildred, and it says her birthday was August 1896, which matches when the newspaper came out. So when you take a piece of one and a piece of the other, you know, I can combine it, because the census just said I was born in Pennsylvania, but the newspaper article gives it down to the township. It says Richmond. You know, so putting those two pieces together, the indirect evidence between the two helps me come up with an answer. Negative evidence is just when you expected something to be there and it wasn't there. Why weren't they there? A lot of times in webinars, as I'm listening to these, preparing for this, they would use an example of, you know, a child is in this census and they were listed as 1 year old, but then 10 years later, when they're 11, they're not there. Why aren't they there? Did they die? Is that evidence that they died? Are they living with someone else? You know, why are they missing? You expected them to be there and they weren't there. So here's another example of negative evidence. There's great-grandma. She lived, this is the Buffalo City Directory, 1930. She lived at 162 Lovejoy. So I went to the 1930 census and I found 162 Lovejoy. I found another family, I didn't find her. And she lived at that address for years. Why isn't she there? She should have been there. Negative evidence, bad great-grandma. She was a difficult one to find. So, correlation. Okay, there's another book. There's lots of books up here. In Mastering Genealogical Proof by Dr. Jones, he talks about correlation. You know, with step 3, we're analyzing, but we also need to correlate it. We need to compare it to other genealogy information to see if it conflicts or if it's running in line. Does it match? Does it not match? Okay, and you need to do multiple ones and put those side by side and see if it works. So here's an example. Here is a baptism record, and I want to determine its quality to start. So is this an original, a derivative, or an authored work? It's an original, yep. It was created for the first time there. The priest wrote it in the baptism record. It was not reprinted in the newspaper. We're looking at that. Okay? Now, if we were to analyze who was writing it, okay? If I'm trying to find out who are the parents of Barbara, and this is her baptism, and the informant is the priest, would that be primary, secondary, or undetermined?
Secondary.
See, I think it's primary. It's the priest, right? He baptized the
Priest did it,
child.
so
First hand. So I think it's
But he
primary.
baptized a baby whose people said, she's my daughter.
Well, thank you, Barbara, for ruining my example. It could be. It could be. Likely, though, the priest would have the knowledge. I mean, if they were coming to church and, you know, until she was 9 months pregnant. Let's live in the happy world, not the Barbara negative world. Okay.
leave you in your happy place.
Yes, you can always find a way to argue it, but, okay, so, I'm trying to correlate. I want to know who Barbara's parents are. I have the baptism, but that's only one source. Let me get another one and compare it to it. So I've got her death certificate. Okay, the informant is her husband. They were married a really long time, from 1889 to 1954. Okay, really long time. The informant's her husband. On the death certificate, He writes, Michael Goldwitzer was Barbara's father. The dad died 17 years before they were married. He never knew her dad, okay? Then, for the mom, unknown. She lived with them from 1889 when they were married until she died in 1908. Thank you, John, for nothing. Oh, for goodness sakes.
How old was John when he gave that information?
Pretty old, pretty old. But my gut is that maybe he wrote that because he didn't know the mom's maiden name. That's my, and so if you don't know the full name, to put unknown, yeah. So I found correlating evidence for the dad. Michael is in both the baptism and the death record. Two different informants, the priest, the husband, okay? So that's good, but I need to find a second piece of evidence for the mom's name. I don't have any others. So you gotta start using what's called the fan principle. And there's a quiz later, and this is one of them, so write this down. So the fan principle, you think I'm joking, I am not. There is a test. The fan principle was created by Elizabeth Shaw Mills that wrote this book. And so she talks a lot about don't just search your direct line. You gotta search the friends and family, the associates, the neighbors, because they live together in that community. They signed, they witnessed for each other's, land records and probates and all that type of stuff. So the fan is the friends and family, associates, and neighbors. So if I can't find who Barbara's parents are, she had siblings. Maybe one of her brothers or sisters has a document that has the parents, okay? So I'm trying to correlate. I'm weighing things against each other. Sure enough, her sister also had a baptism record, different church, different priest, and the names match. So I think I have found independent sources that are original by the priest, primary informant, saying the same information that doesn't conflict with each other. 2 thumbs up, Barbara. So, she's right. It could have been a stolen baby. All right, so number 4, step 4 is a resolution of any conflicting evidence. And this is a long presentation, but I appreciate you guys hanging in there. There's cookies after, so. All right, so once we've analyzed and correlated our findings, sometimes things might not work out where the information matches. And we have to look at that. Now, if all of our information matches, we can skip this step. And this is the only step of the 5 that you're allowed to skip. You can't skip it if there is unmatched, if it doesn't match. But if it matches, you can skip it, okay? So, a research question was, when did Thomas Stratton, that died in Elmira, New York on April 29, 1943, when was he born? That's my research question. Now, when I find him in the 1900 census, it says he was born January 1864. It's an original document. I don't know who the informant was. It's undetermined. But it directly answers my question. When was he born? He was born January 1864. Okay? So there's different things to look at. When I find his death certificate, which this is one of the ones that I ordered 2 of. So this says his birthday was September 20th, 1860. That's not January 1864. The informant says Franco Day, which is the same name as the undertaker. And I Googled it. That was a funeral home. Not a great informant. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. Could be right. Could be the census was wrong. I don't know. Okay? So I got these two things to figure out. So I started thinking, going through my list, what other records might have him, his birth date on? Mine is church and vital records, and the next thing that I want to think of. So if I start with his marriage record, this was the one where I emailed years ago and found it. So in Pennsylvania, they started in this county, according to their website, they have marriage applications to return 1883 to the present. His marriage was in 1891. So I emailed apparently a while ago. And, you know, I said, hey, do you happen to have naturalization for him, and do you have a birth record? And she got back to me, please contact the Historical Society for Naturalization, and we looked him up in the birth records, or the marriage records, and he is not listed in the marriage records. So now I know that, I don't have to bug them again, and I have to make a note. We had Jeanette before. I have to make a note so I don't redo that work again. So what about church records? Okay, that would be my next one. When I look at Austin, Pennsylvania, where he was married, in the 2000 census, there was only 623 people living there. It wasn't, not a big place. And so, but if you do a Google search, I did a Google search, churches near Austin, PA. And it gave me all these little churches. And look, there's one right there. There's a Methodist church. And so they have an active Facebook page. This could be my next step. I could maybe reach out, send a message to the priest or pastor and say, hey, do you guys have records back from 1890s? You know, and if so, would you mind looking for me? Maybe that would help answer my question. But until I figure it out, I have to keep getting all those records. I can't move on to step 5. Okay, I can't have a conclusion. If my question is, when was he, well, I kind of didn't answer it. No, I didn't. When was he born? And I have 2 conflicting dates. I can't have a conclusion until I figure out which one is the right one. Or maybe it's a 3rd date. So you have to keep trying, okay? You can't resolve it until it's done. And sadly, we have to sometimes, some things can't be resolved. And we have to accept that. And maybe someday, down the line, a magical record will appear. Or time machines will be invented. Yeah. Okay, so we made it. Step 5. Yay! So step 5 is a soundly reasoned, coherently written conclusion. So Carol at the beginning of the presentation had mentioned about how we had these special interest groups first started. And in January we did one where we watched 3 different webinars, and it was about preserving your genealogy. You know, what will happen to your stuff after you pass away, and how organized are you? How are you leaving it behind? And I think that correlates with this, because if you've been working on your tree and everything's in your family tree maker software, but do your kids or grandkids know what that program is? Is that, you know, are they going to just wipe your computer, put it out to, it's there. How are you going to share it, you know, like beyond? And so writing is one of those options to share it. It's, you know, and you can do it in so many different ways, you know, but you have to get your information out there. And that really spoke to me. I can't have children, so I think about, holy cow, because I've been the family historian. Everyone on both sides of the family have given me all this stuff. You know, I've got 3 sets of china, I've got all this stuff, but what's going to happen to it after I pass away? And so I need to gather all my stuff, organize it, digitize it, get it up there, and then when I've come up with these questions, you know, why I did something, I need to put on, this is my plan, on my ancestry and family search trees, my conclusions. You know, like I've got 2 birth dates for great-grandma, and why I think this one's correct and this one not. You know, so that people down the road will understand where I've come from. And that's what this step is. Elizabeth Shaw Mills, she, on Family Search, chose one way to do this was on a person's profile page, there's an area where you can put a life sketch. She did a bunch of research because there was 2 people with the same names that everybody in their tree kept putting together as one person. And so she detailed out, this person's this person, this person's that person, and put it on the online tree for everyone to see. I've also seen it in Collaborate on Family Search, you know, because we can all, if you have an account, you can post it on there. You know, a person who talked about their trip and what they found and why, you know, why they thought what they thought. Those are 2 options. If you're on Ancestry, we talked a little bit about this morning, You can leave notes galore to yourself in the notes tab, but those are private. If you want to leave something for people to see, you have to leave them out in the comments area. Or you can type up a document in Word, upload it to the person's gallery. Or, the ancestor, upload it to their gallery so that other people, if your tree is public, they can read that and save it to their tree. There's 3 types of conclusions. I don't have this as internalized as I do some of the other portions of GPS because I'm still learning this too. But a proof statement is just a short thing, like a 1 sentence, this is what this was. A summary is several pages, like maybe you're putting more stuff together, for a lineage society application, or maybe you're writing your own family, genealogy. And then a proof argument is more like case studies with complex type of things that you're working out that you would find in peer-reviewed journals. I'm taking a course. Carol said I'm a member of the National Genealogical Society, and the one reason why I joined is because they have courses. They have a free basics course with their membership, and then they have ones where you pay. And so I'm in the middle of the American Studies, and I'm on the 3rd of 4 classes, and they require me to write reports. And so I did. I can't tell you how scholarly I felt. Look at this thing. I had citations. I started with my research question. What this was, the homework assignment was take something you have at home, something you want to know something about. And so I'll show you the document. I had this unauthored thing about when Dad was 21, he worked at this mill, and then when he was 22, he worked at this store. And so what I did was I wanted to know who wrote that paper and who's Dad. And so I transcribed it, I analyzed it, I looked at the places that were referenced, the people that were referenced. I had citations. I got points off, they weren't right. But I tried. And so I correlated, I looked at it against other evidence, I did more analysis, I came up with a conclusion, and then I said, if I was to continue past this, these would be my next steps. I had the attachment of the document, which I had to cite to, and she wanted to know where it was. So where is it in your house? Where somebody, I couldn't find it. Because I had scanned it years ago, and so I sent her 2 options. I go, well, here's the fictitious one. It's in my Johnson family file box. This was my fictitious one, undated piece of paper in Johnson family photos and documents box. So I made a box. I took a copy box from work, and I wrote Johnson on the outside. The paper's not in there. And she laughed. She's like, no, it's fine. Or and then I created a citation where I don't know where it is. But besides that, it was super what a learning experience. I'm enjoying this class and doing that. So coming up with a conclusion and how much you internalize when you do write something down and you put all that together, it's so great. And so, when you do that though, you have to know that even though you did the best work, tomorrow something new might show up that might overturn your whole thing. And that's okay. Then you start it over, you put in that new piece of evidence, and you make a new conclusion. Carol, do you mind getting the lights? On your handout, on the back, there's a link to a website. Sorry, I'm going to no, that's cool. There's a website, Genealogy Explained, and for free, I think you have to put in your email address, and then he'll email this link to you. You can get this GPS flow chart, which is just awesome. So, it starts with write a research question, and then, is it about a specific relationship, identity, or status? No. Write a research question. Is it about a specific relationship, identity, status? Yes. List your potential relevant sources. We did that. You know, like, so then go find those sources, categorize them. Is it an original one? Great. Is it derivative? Does an original exist? Oh yeah, go find it. Okay, are there sources cited? And it takes you through this whole process, and that's a free download. Okay, so you can, if you just put in your email right there, you can find that. It's not free to print though, holy cow. More expensive than I imagined. So, I truly believe learning about this type of stuff is going to help us all break our brick walls. If you have the answer in documents, but you forgot that you had the document, it's probably right at home. That happened to me. You know, like, so, keep learning, keep coming to our programs, watch webinars online, read books, don't just buy them. I'm getting better at it. Do you want to know the honest truth? That's why I created the book discussion group. Because I kept buying books and I needed to make myself read them. And so it's helping us hold each other accountable. Okay? If you like the Genealogical Proof Standard and you want a workbook, just like how there's a whole book about creating citations, there's a workbook taking you through each of the 5 steps. You answer questions, the answers are in the back. You can, this is a great reference by Tom Jones, and we did it. Yay!